Hello class, so we're finally to the point where we're going to start talking about pre-flop strategy, and we're going to kick it off with bet sizing. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about bet sizing as the first person in the pot, and then we're going to talk about bet sizes when we have limpers in the pot. So I'm going to use this image of a 6-max table, and we're going to use this as a working document. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark it up in the video. And let's go ahead and get started. So remember that the small blind has a forced bet and the big blind has a forced bet. And remember that this is going to be a half of the big blind. So we'll go ahead and mark that in. And then remember the big blind is always going to be one big blind as a forced bet. So what are my recommendations for raising first in? And when I say raising first in, I mean that it folds around to you and you're the first person that's going to enter the pot. So for example, if you're under the gun in your first act, what are you going to be raising? My recommendation, 3 big blinds, regardless of what you have. Now, if it's folded around to you and you're in middle position or cutoff, again, my recommendation, 3 big blinds. And we are betting the same size pre-flop regardless of our holdings. And so that's a mistake that a lot of beginning players will start to do, is that they'll bet less with their more marginal hands and they'll bet more with their premium hands. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to give away the strength of our hand. So that's why we're always betting 3 big blinds from these positions, because regardless if we have 5-6 suited or pocket aces, we're betting 3 big blinds so our opponents don't have any clue as to what we're betting. And if you are that type of person that's betting more with the stronger hand and betting less with the weaker hand, that's an exploitable type of play, and a good player is going to pick up on that, and they'll know when you bet more you have a strong hand and when you bet less you have a weak hand. So that's why we are betting 3 big blinds. Now remember, we talked about stealing in a previous lecture, and stealing's when you open up from the cutoff, the button, or the small blind. Well, my recommendation is once you get to the button, when it's considered a steal, that you bet less at the higher stakes, but at 2NL to 5NL, I recommend that you just stick it in and keep it at 3 big blinds. And same thing in the small blind. If you're in the small blind and you want to steal from the big blind, we want to keep it at 3 big blinds for up to 5NL. So we'll say 2 to 5NL. We are going to make it, and I apologize for my poor handwriting here because I'm using my mouse. So we're going to keep it at 3 big blinds from 2NL to 5NL. Now once we get to 10NL or greater, so I'm going to say 10NL plus, we can start reducing it. And my recommendation is going to be anywhere from 2 to 2.5 big blinds. So let's recap. Betting first into the pot. If you're first in and under the gun, middle position or the cutoff, you're always going to be betting 3 big blinds regardless of the stakes at micro stakes. Doesn't matter if you're playing 2NL, 5NL, 10NL, or 25NL. Just make it 3 big blinds. If you're on the button or the small blind, at 2NL up to 5NL, we're going to be betting 3 big blinds. Once we get to 10NL or higher, from the button or the small blind, we can make it 2 to 2.5 big blinds. And the reason why we're just sticking with 3 big blinds at 2NL or 5NL is because the monetary value is so low. It doesn't make a difference to your opponent if you are betting anywhere from 3 big blinds to 2 big blinds. To them, it's all the same. But once you get to say 10NL and 25NL, the monetary value starts to go up. So it becomes more of a consideration for your opponents. And when you are betting less from these positions, from a steal position to try to take out the blinds and take down that money pre-flop, you are risking less. So your risk to reward ratio is going to be closer. You would much rather prefer to risk 2 big blinds to win 1.5 versus risking 3 big blinds to win 1.5. And in regards to 2 to 2.5 big blinds, it's all just personal preference. I usually just stick with 2.5 big blinds in my personal opinion. So that is raising first in. Now let's talk about betting and raising with limpers. So let me go ahead and refresh the screen and get all that off of there. So let me go ahead and remark my half big blind here for small blind as a forced bet and 1 big blind for the big blind. Now let's say that under the gun limps for 1 big blind. And it's your turn and you're in middle position. So what should you bet? Here's my recommendation if there's a limper in the pot. 3 big blinds plus, excuse me for that, 1 big blind per limper. And this is when you're in position. So this would equal, with this limper in the pot, we want to be betting 4 big blinds. And this is pretty standard. So when you're raising with a limper and if you're in position, it's going to be 3 big blinds plus 1 per limper. Now, if you have more than 1 limper, you're just going to keep adding on additional. So if you're on the button and 3 people limp, you're going to do 3 big blinds plus 3 limpers. It's going to be 6 big blinds. Now let's go ahead and talk about, let me erase this again and start over from scratch. Let's assume you're out of position. So let's go ahead and do out of position, and I'm going to change the color to white so it's easier to read. So let's say that you're in the big blind. So you already have 1 big blind in there, and small blind has half big blind. Let's say that under the gun folds, middle position limps for 1 big blind, cutoff folds, button folds, and big blind decides to fold or small blind decides to fold as well. So now it's your turn in the big blind, and it's just you in middle position. My recommendation when you're out of position is our standard 3 big blind raise plus 1 per limper, let's say 1 over L, plus 1 big blind for being out of position. So I always recommend adding on an additional big blind when you're out of position because of that positional disadvantage. And it may not seem like much, but the more that you play, the more that you'll notice that you are at more of a disadvantage because you're out of position. So instead of it being our standard 4 big blinds, we end up making it 5 big blinds instead. And this is pretty standard. So let's recap. And let me erase that and start over. So remember, if you're raising first in, 3 big blinds from here, 3 big blinds from here, 3 big blinds from here. At the button to the small blind, depending upon the stakes, it's going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 big blinds. Remember, at 2 and L to 5 and L, just stick with the 3 big blinds. Once you get up to 10 and L or higher, anywhere from 2 to 2.5 is fine. Now let's go ahead and talk about recapping one more time. We're talking about with limpers in the pot. Remember, in position, 3 big blinds plus 1 big blind per limper. Now, if you're out of position, add on another 1 big blind. And so this is when you're out of position. So I'm just going to note OP. And that's our simple equation for being out of position. So that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. I mean, the bet sizing is simple. Just remember that we want to standardize our bet sizing based upon our positions. We don't want to adjust our bet sizing based upon the strength of our cards because that's exploitable. When we are doing our bet sizing based upon position, it's not exploitable. So that's what we want to do. Now, if you have any questions about this, let me know. If not, go ahead and we'll see you at the next lecture.
This video is a part of our Crush MicroStakes online poker course, The Complete Mastery Guide. If you like this course, go ahead and click this link here where you can get this course for 50% off via our special YouTube video using our coupon code YouTube, and you'll get enrolled in this course for only $6. Thanks for watching and hope to see you over at MicroGrinder Poker School.